So, Frankie, how are you doing?
Yeah, fantastic. Everything is really good. It's going to be a beautiful year.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to met you in Nyack, and I understand you've been obviously recording your whole life.
Oh well, yes, that's the entertainer's dream is to record what he does because when you're performing, you're behind the light, so you really can't see who you are until it's recorded. So since I was a little kid, every time I heard a recording, it was wonderful because it recaptures the moment, and also you can see if you're good or not for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But and you yourself, Chris, I appreciate because you've been doing this for a long time yourself, and the work that I've seen by you is phenomenal.
Oh,
So you're definitely appreciated. I
I
want to say
can't
that
wait to
first
work
of
on
all.
these records with you, too.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have some fun with that because
Yeah,
we have a lot to work with.
yeah,
And, you have the juice and everything that's
yeah.
necessary to make it
Um,
done, and you're talented yourself,
well,
so
I
it's
have
easy.
some skills, but I love music, and
Hmm.
I'm here, and
Hmm. Well, I've been around it all my life, so it's like second nature. I've been
hmm
performing since I was a baby on up.
hmm
Because my mother had a bar on Long Island when I was a kid, so I was always listening to music. And in my family, the Humphrey family is all music minded, and that's what they've done mostly for a living. Everybody was an entrepreneur. They did hair, music, construction, music,
yeah,
everything in music was like the key. And it's very very soulful, jazz, R&B, touch of classical, using all the instruments. And there's a bunch of history names that we're going to go into later on about tracing of my uncles who played with Billie Holiday and Count Basie and those guys. And I have the paperwork on it, so we'll get into that part later. But the fascinating part was the ability to have an assignment that you love to do, and how long you can get enjoyment out of that assignment. And since music is now turned into like this mega multi-million dollar facet thing, which is very, very important because music's been the healing force since the beginning of time, I always feel. And having it recognized at that level is amazing because I've been around for a minute. I can think of each period and each artist that influenced a lot of the things and the decisions that were made. I remember in the 60s when the riot was out, it was James Brown saying, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," that stopped the riots.
that's what my mom said.
Yeah, it's a fact. Because at that time, people of color was fighting each other about what you want to call me, colored people or black people. It was just a whole struggle that was in between. So when James Brown stood up and said, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," that made everybody unify, and it's okay to be who you are. And we're still evolving. And that's always been a funny story for me because my uncles were theologians. So when I studied history, come to find out that it started off chocolate. I mean,
Hmm
Cleopatra was blacker than me. I mean, so color is basically obsolete when you have a higher intelligence. But in the world, they dilute a lot of the facts, and that's why you see the struggles. Because it's just illiteracy and lack of education. So, but to channel it all through music, it clears it up because James Brown was hot. Nina Simone, she was another freedom fighter at the time that was very very important. Aretha Franklin, of course. These were just standards of soulful music spelled from the heart, and the lyrics are very very important, and the beat is just it's really cool. But in creating this, what happened is, we're blessed to be talented, but to take it to another level, you got to think in terms of it's a technique, so your head doesn't get swelled. You know what I mean? And then also you can keep your ability. What I mean by that, you'll hear a person singing the tenor with now when I'm doing that note, there's certain things I can't do. When you're singing tenor, you can't smoke cigarettes. You can't smoke weed. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things because you can do it for a minute, but it'll take your voice out. Certain techniques, you can't stay up all night. The tenor voice is the most delicate voice to work with. But if you use your natural voice, then you can do a lot of stuff because that's your speaking voice. So that's different techniques. So you get your Barry White, your Lou Rawls. All those guys are natural singers. If you go to the tenor, Philip Bailey, Eddie Kendricks, I was a tenor, but that's why their longevity changed because the tenor is very delicate because it's a very fragile voice. And it's certain techniques that goes along with it. But my favorites were Curtis Mayfield was one of them. Marvin Gaye was always really really brilliant. James Brown, of course, because he was the one who influenced me when I was like a little kid. To see him dancing, I said, "Oh, that's what I'm gonna do." Because I started off dancing when I was a kid. My mother had a bar in Long Island, and it was a huge barn in Cinema Ritchie's, and we're talking in the 50s. And that would also let me know that the color line was oblivious. I mean, we had black and white people that know. I never knew that there was a really a war technically until I moved to Newark, New Jersey in the '60s. And then they said, you can't go up here and you can't go down here. So what happened is the black people was taught that the white people was going to get them, and the white people was taught that they were going to get them, and we just fought in the middle. So me knowing the difference, because it's not what you say, it's what you do, and it's how you act that makes you who you are. And not living up to those falsities. I've had black and white friends all my life, and it never made a difference. But what I did do was you got to keep, each person has an assignment. So whatever, if I meet somebody, first of all, I ask them what their name is and what they do. And then that's how I come, if they're a plumber or they paint or whatever, construction-wise, it kept the theory going. And I keep that in my music. Because when you sing and perform, you utilize every other technique that you've had in that music. Because I do construction, I love it, not because I have to, because I like to, and I get paid for it, of course, and I like before and afters. But while I'm working in the dust and the cement building stuff, it's like creation at its best. And remember, when your job is also a talent, and when you're singing, those are the people you got to sing to. Now everybody got the house with the legs stripped up and the pit bull and the big car. It's how they got there. So a lot of the songs should go into the process of how they got where they are. And so I try to, the long story short, I try to keep my songs in the storytelling factor to the positive. Because all those positive things last longer, and they skip through generation to generation. And that's my main influence with my music, and that's how I live it. And that's why I'll do it till I can't do it anymore.
So let me ask you, Frankie, how'd you get to Nyack?
Oh, my goodness, that's a good story. It's a thick one. Well, I got to go through the tree. My uncle were famous musicians. I mean, they were well known. Sir Hildred Humphreys and Frank Fatman Humphreys. Hildred was a saxophone player that played with Cal Basie, Billie Holiday, blah, 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 out of Pittsburgh. My Uncle Frank worked with Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, and it's all proven fact. And there's a huge, I'll show it to you on the computer later. He played trumpet and wrote music. So they came to Nyack to play at the Helen Hayes Theater. And this was like in the late 39, 40s, and the 40s.
Wow.
And that's how my family pulled up into Nyack. And then they told us Sister Nellie Dorsey, who lived in Pittsburgh, and she was the matriarch, which means you can funnel the money to her and she'll make sure everything gets done, because musicians travel around a lot. So they really don't have to worry about where they live at, because they're living out of the box. So everybody would funnel the money to Dorsey, who had the house by the river, Fort Lauderdale, Pew in Nyack. Pre-Victorian was my family home for 6 years. And then my aunt had a beauty shop on Park Street right in Nyack. So that's how they first got started coming up to Nyack. But how they made it to Nyack was they did a show there. So based out of Pittsburgh. So I was born in 55, and my mother came up to Nyack, was a beautician with my aunts working for her. And that's how she met my father, and that's how I got to Nyack. And then we moved to the Bronx when I was born, and then we went to Long Island for 5 years. That's when my mother had bought a bar, but that's how we got to Nyack. And then we.
I mean, you obviously.
This is my hometown. Yeah.
You love Nyack.
Oh, it's my hometown.
Me too. I love it too.
It's a wonderful place, and it always had an art feeling to it. Because Helen Hayes, she was the matriarch of Rockland County. Also, by her being called the first woman of New York, she bought a lot of Rockland, and she turned it into the Helen Hayes place where they had up there, where your rehabilitation centers and all that kind of stuff. Because what happened is certain artists, when they make a certain amount of money, that's what they do. Her money actually shaped the artistry of Nyack, because she brought them up from New York. And there's so many, I can be telling you, just Google it. There's so many artists that used to come through Nyack, because every time they come to New York, they would, the wealthy people would migrate to Nyack. And they'd come through this way. Frank Sinatra, everybody, Jimi Hendrix. There was a place right on Broadway. I'll show it to you, but he had an apartment there. There's some kids. Yes, right here in Nyack. It's the best kept secret. Nyack is the old joint. Yeah, and they had a picture of him in the window. It means all are iconic things that happen. But it's just a pathway of New York. It's a land. You know what I mean? It's the outskirts. I like Nyack because I can think. I lived in the city. I lived in Newark. I lived in other places. But when you're in the midst, you have to be a part of and you can't separate yourself because you're a connected unit. When you live outside the town, you can look at yourself from a different view and then figure out stuff. You don't have to work as hard because you don't have all the different decisions to be made because you're in the middle of everything. So I always like living on the outskirts of New York. And Nyack is like the oasis. They found us, of course. But it's ameliorated nice. Everybody, they're taking care of the property. It's expensive, of course, but everything is expensive. But it's a definitely art town because you can stay in who you are. And a lot of the entertainers used to come up here because they wouldn't get harassed. See, like if you go to the city and you step off there and you're anybody, I mean, you know, from Gladys Knight to this one and that one, New York, they do, oh, give me your autograph. Nah, they don't charge you. I mean, they just go, hey, that's so and so. But you know, everybody's so comfortable that if they'll get an autograph, but it won't be like you're attacked. You don't have to build fences around your house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because a lot of them, Oprah was up here to see Demings. He did the movie with her. Which one was that? Beloved. I met her and then Toni Morrison. I know her personally.
Sure.
Nyack has been a wonderful. Toni was. I met her in '79. They gave me a grant up here for costume and set design. I'm also a designer, and she was one of the speakers at the time. And '79 when they first legalized Martin Luther King's birthday was legal, and Stevie Wonder was the one that got that done. I remember that's a high note. And so they were introducing African Americans. That's in the process of, because we're like a best kept secret to a lot of people, but there's people that know. I mean, African Americans have done a lot for America that they're not credited for. And like the first heart that ever was the doctor. He was black. The first clock, the blueprints to the White House. I mean, there's a lot of unsung heroes that we just don't know about. So I never had to get that old, well, I'm black and I can. It was, I'm black and I can, and I'm going to keep being able to do it and enlighten as many people as possible, because there's really no excuses. I don't give no excuses because there is none. You know what I mean? I found out that my craft spoke louder than everything else, because even when at our darkest days with the riots, everybody was, if you got music, if you had something positive, the negative didn't make it, you know. So
Frank, you know I love you, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Thanks for talking to us.
I
Man.
can't help it. That's
I
conversation.
I appreciate you, man. Yeah, man. Can't wait to let them hear this new album you got coming.
Great. Oh, that's gonna be something to see here.
We're gonna do it. A whole bunch of musicians gonna work on it.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Cool cut.